When billionaire Elena Cross opened her garage door at dawn and found an electrician kneeling in the half-light, she didn't expect him to look at her the way everyone else did, with calculation. But Daniel Harper barely glanced up. He was focused on a flickering bulb, his weathered hand steady, his expression unreadable. What she didn't know was that this routine service call would unravel the carefully constructed walls around her isolated world. And what he didn't know was that the quiet woman watching him from the doorway would challenge everything he believed about worth, ambition, and what it meant to be enough. This is their story. Two people from opposite worlds who discovered that connection isn't built on status or wealth, but on the courage to be seen. Before we begin, if you're enjoying this story, please hit the like button and comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Now let's start from the beginning. The service call came through at 6:43 on a Tuesday morning, exactly 17 minutes after Daniel Harper dropped his daughter off at daycare. The address was in Westridge Hills, one of those neighborhoods where the driveways were longer than most people's yards, and the mailboxes had better architecture than Daniel's entire apartment building. He'd been working as a licensed electrician for nearly a decade, and wealthy clients were nothing new. They usually wanted the same things: quick fixes, minimal conversation, and absolute invisibility the moment the work was done. Daniel had perfected that role. He showed up on time, fixed the problem, collected payment, and left without leaving an impression. It was easier that way, simpler. The GPS led him through winding roads lined with mature oaks and iron gates, finally stopping at a modern estate that looked more like an art installation than a home, all glass and steel and deliberate angles. The kind of place designed to impress, not to comfort. Daniel grabbed his toolbox from the truck and walked up the stone pathway. Before he could ring the bell, the door opened. The woman standing there was younger than he expected, maybe 30, dressed in dark jeans and a cream sweater that probably cost more than his monthly rent. Her hair was pulled back in a loose knot, and she wore no makeup. But it was her eyes that caught him off guard. They weren't assessing him the way most wealthy clients did, measuring his worth against their expectations. Instead, they were simply tired. "You're the electrician," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, ma'am. Daniel Harper. I got a call about a garage light. It's been flickering for 3 days. Drives me insane." She stepped aside. "This way." Daniel followed her through a foyer that echoed with their footsteps, past a living room with furniture that looked like it had never been sat on, and into a kitchen where morning light poured through floor-to-ceiling windows. Everything was spotless, sterile almost. She led him to a door that opened into the garage, a 3-car space with polished concrete floors and enough room to host a small wedding. Only one vehicle sat inside, a sleek black sedan that looked like it rarely left the driveway. "It's that one." She pointed to a ceiling fixture near the back corner. "It flickers whenever I try to work out here." Daniel set his toolbox down and pulled out his ladder. "You work out in the garage?" "Sometimes, when I need space to think." He climbed the ladder and unscrewed the fixture cover. The problem revealed itself immediately. A loose wire connection, probably from shoddy installation. 5-minute fix, tops. "How long will this take?" she asked from below. "Not long, 10 minutes maybe." "Good, I have a meeting at 8. Daniel worked in silence, tightening the connection and checking the voltage. He was aware of her presence behind him, not hovering exactly, but not leaving either. Most clients disappeared the moment he started working, trusting him to finish and lock up behind himself. This woman seemed watchful, like she was used to monitoring everything in her environment. He replaced the cover and climbed down. "All set. Should be good now." She walked over and flipped the switch. The light came on, steady and bright. "Thank you." "No problem." Daniel folded the ladder. "If you have any other issues, just call the office." "What's your rate?" He told her. She didn't flinch. "I'll write you a check," she said, already moving toward the kitchen. Daniel followed, toolbox in hand. She pulled a checkbook from a drawer, actual paper checks, not a credit card or app, and wrote with quick, precise strokes. When she handed it over, their fingers brushed for a fraction of a second. "Thank you, Mr. Harper." "Daniel's fine." "Elena." She extended her hand properly this time. Her grip was firm, professional, the kind of handshake that came from years of business meetings and negotiations. But there was something else in it too, a deliberateness, like she was testing whether he'd treat her differently now that he had her name. "Nice to meet you, Elena." She walked him to the door, and Daniel assumed that would be it. Another job done, another anonymous client added to the ledger. But as he reached the threshold, she spoke again. "Can I ask you something?" He turned. "Sure." "Do you like your work?" The question threw him. It wasn't what wealthy clients usually asked. They wanted to know if he was bonded, if he'd be quick, if he'd leave the place exactly as he'd found it. Nobody ever asked if he actually liked what he did. "Yeah," he said slowly, "I do. It's honest work, tangible. You fix something, and it stays fixed." She nodded, something flickering across her face. Recognition, maybe, or longing. That must be nice. Before he could respond, she stepped back. "Thank you again, Daniel." The door closed softly, leaving him standing on the front step with a check in his hand and the strange sense that something had just shifted, though he couldn't say what. Daniel didn't think about Elena Cross again until 3 days later, when his phone rang during his daughter Lily's soccer practice. "Daniel Harper." "Mr. Harper, this is Elena Cross. We met earlier this week." He recognized her voice immediately, calm, measured, with an undertone of something he couldn't quite place. "Of course, is something wrong with the light?" "No, the light's fine. I'm calling about something else." A pause. "I have several properties that need electrical work. Regular maintenance, some upgrades. I was wondering if you'd be interested in handling them." Daniel watched Lily chase the ball across the field, her ponytail bouncing. "How many properties are we talking about?" 4 residential, 2 commercial. Nothing urgent, but I'd prefer to work with someone reliable rather than cycling through different contractors." It was a good offer. Steady work, wealthy client, probably minimal oversight. The kind of gig most electricians would jump at. But something in her tone made him hesitate. "Can I ask why you're calling me specifically? There are bigger companies that handle this kind of thing." "I don't want a company. I want someone who actually cares whether the work is done right." Another pause. "You do, don't you?" "Yeah, I do." "Then I'd like to hire you. We can discuss terms whenever you're available." Daniel glanced at his watch. Lily's practice ended in 20 minutes, then dinner, then homework, then bedtime. His schedule was already packed with the delicate choreography of single parenthood and full-time work. "I'm usually booked pretty solid, but I can make time for a consultation. How's Thursday afternoon?" "Thursday works. 2 o'clock? I'll be there." "Thank you, Daniel." She hung up before he could respond. Lily scored a goal and her teammates erupted in cheers. Daniel clapped from the sidelines, pushing thoughts of Elena Cross out of his mind. Whatever this was, a job offer, a business opportunity, it was just work. Nothing more. Thursday arrived with unseasonable warmth, the kind of late autumn day that felt borrowed from summer. Daniel showed up at Elena's house at exactly 2 o'clock, freshly showered and wearing his cleanest work shirt. She answered the door in black slacks and a silk blouse, looking every inch the businesswoman. But her feet were bare, and there was a smudge of what looked like charcoal on her left hand. "Come in." She led him to a sitting room he hadn't seen on his first visit. Smaller, more lived in than the formal spaces. A laptop sat open on the coffee table, surrounded by papers and file folders. "Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water?" "Water would be great, thanks." She disappeared and returned with 2 glasses, handing him one before settling into the chair across from him. "I appreciate you making time for this." "No problem. You mentioned 4 residential properties and 2 commercial?" "Yes. 3 of the residential are rental properties. I maintain them but don't live there. The commercial spaces are office buildings downtown. I can provide you with addresses and access codes for all of them." Daniel pulled out his notebook. "What kind of work are we talking about? Maintenance, repairs, full upgrades?" "A combination. The rentals need safety inspections and some updating, older wiring, outdated fixtures. The office buildings are newer but could use efficiency upgrades. And this house," she glanced around, "could use some attention in the guest wing." "When are you looking to have this done?" "No rush. I'd rather have it done right than done fast." She leaned forward slightly. "I should be clear about something, Daniel. I'm not interested in the cheapest option or the fastest turnaround. I want quality work from someone who won't cut corners. That's worth paying for." It was a refreshing change from clients who wanted champagne results on a beer budget. I can work with that. I'll need to do walkthroughs of each property to give you accurate estimates. Of course. I can arrange access whenever you're available. She paused. I also want to be clear that this is a business arrangement. I'm not looking for friendship or connection. I have people for that. I'm looking for competence and reliability. The statement was so direct it almost felt defensive, like she was drawing a line before one needed to be drawn. Understood, Daniel said. I'm not here to be your friend either. I'm here to do good work. Something shifted in her expression. Relief, maybe, or respect. Good. Then we understand each other. They spent the next 30 minutes going over details. Timelines, payment structures, materials sourcing. Elena was sharp and specific, asking questions that revealed a deeper understanding of electrical systems than most clients possessed. She'd clearly done her research. One more thing, she said as he stood to leave. I prefer minimal disruption. If you need to work in spaces while I'm here, that's fine, but I value quiet, no music, no unnecessary conversation. That works for me. I'm usually pretty focused when I'm working anyway. I noticed. She walked him to the door. I'll email you the property details tonight. You can start the walkthroughs whenever you're ready. Sounds good. He was halfway to his truck when she called out, Daniel. He turned. She stood in the doorway, backlit by the afternoon sun. Thank you for being straightforward with me. Most people aren't. Most people probably want something from you. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. Exactly. The walkthroughs took 2 weeks to complete. Daniel scheduled them around his existing jobs and Lily's activities, carving out pockets of time in the early mornings or late afternoons. Elena gave him access codes and keys, rarely present during his inspections. When she was there, she kept her distance, working in another room while he mapped out circuits and assessed panels. The rental properties were straightforward, typical maintenance issues that came with older homes. The office buildings were more complex, requiring careful planning to minimize tenant disruption, but it was Elena's house that intrigued him most. The guest wing she'd mentioned was actually a converted garage apartment, a self-contained space with its own entrance, bedroom, bathroom, and small kitchenette. The electrical was outdated but functional. What caught his attention was the main room. It had been turned into some kind of studio. Easels lined the walls, covered canvases stacked in corners. Shelves held jars of brushes, tubes of paint, boxes of charcoal. A potter's wheel sat near the window, surrounded by works in progress, bowls and vases and abstract shapes that looked like they were melting. Daniel had been told to assess the lighting, which was inadequate for artwork, but he found himself lingering, studying the paintings. They were abstract, mostly, bold colors and aggressive brushstrokes that seemed to fight against their frames. Angry, almost. Or maybe just uninhibited. Those are private. He spun around. Elena stood in the doorway, her expression unreadable. I'm sorry, the lighting in here is pretty bad for detail work. You'd need better fixtures if you're serious about using this space. I'm aware. She walked in, arms crossed. I don't usually let people in here. I can work around it. Do the assessment from electrical specs instead of, it's fine. She moved to one of the easels, adjusting a canvas that didn't need adjusting. You're right about the lighting. It's been bothering me for months. Daniel pulled out his tablet, making notes. I can install track lighting with adjustable color temperature. Give you flexibility depending on what you're working on. You know about art lighting? I know about lighting in general. Had a client once who was a photographer. Taught me the basics. Elena studied him with that same appraising look she'd given him during their first meeting. You're full of surprises, aren't you? Not really, just paying attention. She almost smiled. Almost. The track lighting sounds good. Add it to the proposal. Daniel finished his notes and headed for the door, but her voice stopped him again. Can I ask you something? He turned. Sure. Why do you do this? The electrical work, I mean. Was it always the plan? The question was personal in a way their previous conversations hadn't been. Daniel considered deflecting, keeping things professional like she'd requested. But something in her tone, genuine curiosity maybe, or the same loneliness he'd heard in her voice that first morning, made him answer honestly. I fell into it, actually. Needed a job right out of high school, and a friend's dad ran an electrical company. Figured I'd do it for a year or two, save some money, figure out what I really wanted. He shrugged. Turns out I was good at it. And then life happened. Got married, had a kid, got divorced. By the time the dust settled, this was what I knew how to do. And like I said before, it's honest work. I fix things, and they stay fixed. There's something satisfying about that. What about what you wanted, before life happened? No one had asked him that in years. Not since Lily's mother left, taking with her any remaining bandwidth for dreams that didn't involve keeping his daughter fed and safe. I used to think about starting my own business. Not just doing service calls, but building something bigger. Training other electricians, taking on commercial projects, maybe even design consultation. He laughed, but it sounded hollow even to him. Turns out wanting something and having the resources to make it happen are two different things. Elena nodded slowly. Yes, they are. An odd silence settled between them, not uncomfortable exactly, but weighted with recognition, like they'd both just admitted to something they usually kept hidden. I should finish up, Daniel said finally. Of course. But as he left, he caught her standing at the window, staring out at something he couldn't see, and he wondered what Elena Cross wanted that she couldn't have, because surely someone with her resources could have anything, unless what she wanted wasn't for sale. Daniel submitted his proposal the following Monday, detailed estimates for each property, timeline projections, materials lists. Elena approved it within 2 hours and transferred a deposit that same afternoon. The efficiency was almost unsettling. They established a routine. Daniel would arrive at whichever property was scheduled, let himself in with the access code, and work without interruption. Elena rarely appeared, communicating mostly through brief emails. Timeline looks good. Proceed with the rental on Oak Street. Or, the office building tenants have been notified. You're clear to start Wednesday. It was exactly what she'd said she wanted. A business arrangement, nothing more. And Daniel told himself he preferred it that way. Easier, cleaner, no complications. But then came the afternoon at her house when everything shifted. He was installing the track lighting in her studio, standing on a ladder while routing cable through the ceiling. Elena was supposed to be at a meeting downtown. He'd specifically scheduled this work while she was out. But when he climbed down to grab another fixture, she was there. She sat on the floor near the window, legs crossed, a sketchbook in her lap. She wasn't looking at him, just drawing with focused intensity. Thought you had a meeting, Daniel said. Cancelled. She didn't look up. Don't mind me. Keep working. So he did. Back up the ladder, running cable, mounting fixtures. The silence between them felt different than the professional quiet of their previous encounters. This was shared space. Two people occupying the same room for no reason except that they both happened to be there. After a while, she spoke. Can I ask you something personal? Daniel paused, drill in hand. Depends on the question. You mentioned you have a daughter. How old? 7. Her name's Lily. That's young for a single parent. Yeah, her mom left when she was 2. Decided motherhood wasn't for her. The bitterness had faded over the years, but traces of it still colored his voice. So it's just us now. Elena set down her charcoal. That must be difficult. It is, but she's worth it. Every late night, every missed opportunity, every sacrifice, she's worth all of it. What kind of sacrifices? Daniel climbed down from the ladder, wiping his hands on his jeans. The usual. Social life, dating, sleep. I had to turn down a really good job in Seattle last year because it would have meant relocating, and I couldn't pull Lily away from her school and her friends. That's just how it is when you're responsible for another human being. Your wants come second. Do you resent that? The way your life shaped around her? The question was so direct it almost felt invasive. But Elena's expression held no judgment, just genuine curiosity. No, Daniel said. I don't. Because I chose it. When her mom left, I could have fought for split custody, made her shoulder half the responsibility. But I didn't want that for Lily. I didn't want her growing up feeling like a burden split between 2 reluctant parents. So I chose full custody, and I chose everything that came with it. He met Elena's eyes. The hard part isn't the sacrifice. The hard part is explaining to people why I'm okay with it. Everyone assumes I must be miserable, giving up so much. But I'm not. I'm building something good for someone I love. That's not sacrifice. That's just love. Elena looked at him for a long moment, something unreadable moving across her face. That's a rare perspective. Is it? In my experience, yes. Most people keep score. They measure what they give against what they receive and feel cheated when the balance tips. Sounds exhausting. It is. She stood, brushing charcoal dust from her jeans. That's why I prefer solitude. At least then, the only person I'm accountable to is myself. Daniel understood what she wasn't saying, that wealth had taught her everyone wanted something, that connection came with price tags and expectations, that it was safer to keep people at arm's length than risk being used. For what it's worth, he said carefully, not everyone keeps score. No, but enough do that it's hard to tell the difference. She walked to one of her paintings, a canvas covered in deep blues and grays, storm colors. Do you want to know why I paint? If you want to tell me. Because it's the only thing I do that has no purpose, no board to impress, no investors to reassure, no metrics to meet. I can fail completely, and it doesn't matter. No one sees it but me. She touched the edge of the canvas. There's freedom in that. Creating something that doesn't have to be good or useful or profitable. It can just be. Daniel thought about his own life, structured around schedules and responsibilities and the constant need to be enough. Enough money, enough time, enough patience, enough energy. He couldn't remember the last time he'd done something without purpose. That does sound freeing, he admitted. You should try it sometime, doing something that doesn't matter. I wouldn't even know where to start. Elena smiled then, a real smile, not the polite professional mask she usually wore. It transformed her entire face, made her look younger and more alive. Neither did I. That's the point. After that afternoon, something changed between them. Nothing obvious or dramatic. Elena didn't suddenly become warm or chatty, and Daniel didn't abandon his professional boundaries. But there was a new ease in their interactions, a quiet comfort that hadn't existed before. She started appearing more often while he worked, not hovering or supervising, just present. She'd bring her laptop and work in the same room, or sketch while he rewired fixtures. Sometimes they talked, brief exchanges about work or weather, or nothing in particular. Other times they just shared the silence. Daniel found himself looking forward to those moments more than he wanted to admit. There was something peaceful about Elena's presence, something genuine that cut through the performance of daily life. She didn't need him to be charming or impressive. She didn't need him to be anything except competent and honest. It was refreshing in a way he hadn't experienced since before his marriage fell apart. One evening, he was finishing up at her house when she appeared with 2 glasses of wine. It's after 6, she said, offering him one. You're off the clock. Daniel hesitated. Accepting the wine felt like crossing some invisible line from professional to personal, but refusing felt unnecessarily rigid. He took the glass. Thanks. They stood in the kitchen, neither sitting, as if sitting would make this something more than what it was. Just 2 people having a drink. I got the inspection report for the Oak Street property, Elena said. Everything passed. Your work is excellent. Good. That panel was a nightmare, but it should be solid now. I don't usually hire the same contractor for multiple properties. I prefer to diversify, reduce dependency on any one person. She swirled her wine. But I'm making an exception with you. Why? Because you do what you say you'll do. You show up when you promise, you finish on time, and you don't make excuses. That's surprisingly rare. Just doing my job. No, you're doing it well. There's a difference. She leaned against the counter. Most people in your position would use this connection to network, ask for referrals, try to leverage it into something bigger. You haven't done any of that. Daniel shrugged. That's not why I'm here. I know. That's why I trust you. The weight of that statement settled between them. Trust. Such a simple word, but coming from Elena, it felt significant, earned. Can I ask you something? Daniel said. Fair's fair. Why do you live alone in this huge house? You've got all this space, all these properties, but you're here by yourself. Doesn't it get lonely? Elena took a long sip of wine before answering. Loneliness is preferable to the alternative, which is being surrounded by people who only see your bank account. Her voice was matter-of-fact, no self-pity in it. I built my company from nothing. Took an idea I had in college and turned it into something worth billions. Along the way, I learned that success makes you magnetic, but not in the way you'd hope. People see the money and the power, and they want a piece of it. Friends, family, romantic partners, they all come with calculations. What can I get? How can I benefit? What's in this for me? She set her glass down. So yes, I'm alone, but at least I know the solitude is honest. Daniel thought about his own life, where money was always tight and every financial decision required careful calculation. He'd never been in a position where people wanted something from him beyond his time or labor. But he understood the desire for authenticity, for relationships uncomplicated by transaction. That's a hard way to live, he said quietly. It's the only way I know. They finished their wine in silence. When Daniel set his empty glass in the sink, Elena walked him to the door like always. But this time, when he reached the threshold, she touched his arm. Daniel? He turned. Her expression was unguarded in a way he'd never seen, uncertain, almost vulnerable. Thank you for treating me like a person instead of a bank account. That's just being decent. You'd be surprised how rare decency is. He wanted to say something profound, something that would ease the sadness he heard beneath her words. But he was just an electrician who fixed lights and wired panels. He didn't have the words for this. So instead, he just nodded. See you next week. See you next week. As he drove away, watching her house disappear in his rearview mirror, Daniel realized something had shifted tonight. They'd crossed some invisible boundary from client and contractor into something else. Not quite friendship, not yet, but definitely more than professional acquaintance. And despite every logical reason to keep things simple and uncomplicated, part of him was glad. The following week brought an early cold snap that turned the city gray and bitter. Daniel showed up at Elena's house on Wednesday morning to start work on the main electrical panel, a complex job that would require most of the day. He let himself in with the access code, expecting the usual empty house. Instead, he found Elena in the kitchen, still in what looked like pajamas, silk pants and a loose t-shirt, her hair down around her shoulders. She looked younger this way, less guarded. "You're here early," she said, glancing at the clock. It was barely 7:30. "Panel work is loud. Figured I'd start before most people are awake." He paused. "I can come back if—" "No, it's fine. I just wasn't expecting company." She poured herself coffee from a French press. "Want some?" Daniel usually avoided caffeine this early. It made his hands shake when he worked with live wires. But something about the domestic intimacy of the moment made him nod. "Sure. Thanks." She poured a second cup and handed it to him. They stood on opposite sides of the kitchen island, the morning light casting long shadows across the marble countertop. "How's Lily?" Elena asked. The question surprised him. She'd never asked about his daughter before, despite knowing she existed. "She's good. Lost another tooth yesterday. Very proud of herself." "Does she believe in the tooth fairy?" "For now. I figure I've got another year or two before she starts asking questions I can't answer." He sipped the coffee, dark and strong, the kind that tasted expensive. "What about you? Any family?" "My parents died when I was 23. Car accident. I was an only child." She said it flatly, like reciting facts from someone else's biography. "So no family. Just me." "I'm sorry." It was a long time ago. But something in her voice suggested time hadn't healed it so much as buried it. "They never saw what I built. Never knew I'd succeed. I'm sure they'd be proud." Elena's laugh was sharp and humorless. "You didn't know them. My father thought business was a man's world. My mother thought I should marry well and forget about working. When I dropped out of college to pursue my first startup, they called it a phase, said I'd come crawling back when reality hit." She set her cup down with more force than necessary. "So, no, I don't think they'd be proud. I think they'd be confused, maybe even disapproving." Daniel didn't know what to say to that. His own parents had been supportive in their limited way. Working-class people who valued stability over ambition but never made him feel small for wanting more. "That must have been hard," he said finally, "building something that big without their support." "It taught me not to need anyone's approval. Turns out that's a valuable lesson." She glanced at him. "What about your parents? Are they around?" "Dad died 5 years ago. Heart attack. Mom's in Florida with her sister. We talk once a week and she visits for Lily's birthday." He smiled. "She thinks I work too hard." "Do you?" Probably, but what's the alternative? Lily needs things, stability, a future. That doesn't come from working less. Elena studied him with that assessing look he'd come to recognize. You ever think about what you want? Not what Lily needs or what makes sense financially, but what you actually want for yourself. It was the kind of question that used to keep Daniel awake at night, back when Lily's mother first left and the weight of single parenthood settled onto his shoulders like concrete. But he'd learned to stop asking it. Wanting things for himself felt selfish when his daughter's needs were so immediate and real. Not really, he admitted. Doesn't seem productive. Or maybe you're afraid the answer would complicate things. She wasn't wrong. Daniel had spent years building a life that worked. Not perfect, but functional. Stable routines, manageable expectations, just enough income to cover the essentials. Wanting more meant risking that stability, and he couldn't afford risk, not with Lily depending on him. Maybe, he said, but some complications aren't worth it. And some are. Elena picked up her coffee cup. I should let you work. I'll be in my office if you need anything. She disappeared down the hallway, leaving Daniel alone with his thoughts and the taste of expensive coffee. The panel work took most of the morning. Daniel shut off the main breaker and began the careful process of disconnecting and reconnecting circuits, testing voltage, ensuring every connection was secure. It was precise work that required complete focus, which was good. It kept him from thinking about Elena's question. Around noon, she appeared with sandwiches. You've been working for 4 hours straight, she said, setting a plate on the counter. Take a break. Daniel washed his hands and joined her at the kitchen island. The sandwich was from some upscale deli, roasted turkey with arugula and some kind of aioli on artisan bread, the kind of lunch that cost more than he usually spent on dinner. Thank you, he said. You didn't have to do this. I know, but I was ordering for myself anyway, and it seemed rude not to ask if you wanted something. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then Elena spoke. I have a confession to make. Daniel looked up. When I first hired you, it wasn't just about the electrical work. She met his eyes. I was testing something. Testing what? Whether you'd treat me differently once you knew who I was? What I was worth. She picked at her sandwich. Most contractors do research. They Google their clients, check property values, adjust their estimates accordingly. I wanted to see if you'd do the same. Did I pass your test? You didn't take it. You charged me exactly what you charge everyone else, even after you knew I could afford more. You didn't try to upsell me on services I didn't need or inflate your hours. You just did the work. She paused. That's rare, Daniel. Rarer than you probably realize. He wasn't sure how to respond to that. He'd just done what seemed right. Charge a fair price, do good work, don't take advantage. Basic decency, not some moral achievement. I'm sorry you live in a world where that's rare, he said finally. So am I. They finished their lunch, and Daniel returned to the panel. But something had shifted in the air between them. A new level of honesty, maybe, or just the acknowledgement that they both understood what it meant to be seen clearly. By late afternoon, the panel work was done. Daniel was cleaning up his tools when Elena appeared again. I have a proposition for you, she said. He looked up, wary. In his experience, propositions from wealthy clients rarely ended well. I'm hosting a dinner on Friday. Just a small gathering, 8 people, including myself. Business associates mostly. People I need to see but don't particularly want to see. She crossed her arms. I'd like you to come. Daniel blinked. As what, your electrician? As my guest. I tell people I'm bringing someone. They spend less time trying to set me up with their insufferable nephews or business school friends. You eat well, drink expensive wine, and leave whenever you want. I get an evening that doesn't end with someone's LinkedIn request. Why me? Because you won't try to leverage it into something. You won't show up Monday morning with a networking pitch or a business card you want me to pass along to someone at the table. She uncrossed her arms. And because I think you might actually be interesting to talk to, which is more than I can say for most people I'm forced to entertain. Daniel should have said no. This was exactly the kind of complication he'd told himself to avoid, crossing from professional relationship into personal territory with a client who also happened to be a billionaire. Nothing good could come from pretending to be someone he wasn't in a world he didn't belong to. But when he opened his mouth, what came out was, "What time?" Elena smiled. 7. And Daniel? Don't overthink it. Just show up and be yourself. That's all I'm asking. That evening, after picking Lily up from her after-school program and making dinner and helping with homework, Daniel found himself standing in his closet trying to figure out what someone wore to a billionaire's dinner party. He owned exactly 2 button-down shirts that weren't work clothes, 1 pair of dress pants that still fit, and a blazer he'd bought for his father's funeral. His phone buzzed. A text from Elena. Casual. Don't wear a suit unless you want to. How did she know he was stressing about this? He texted back. How casual. Jeans are fine, so are khakis, whatever you're comfortable in. These people are pretentious enough without you adding to it. Daniel smiled despite himself. He settled on dark jeans and a navy button-down, the blazer hanging ready just in case. Friday arrived too quickly. Daniel's mother had agreed to watch Lily for the evening. His usual babysitter was unavailable, and he'd had to explain to his mom that yes, he had dinner plans, and no, it wasn't a date, just a professional obligation. With a client who invited you to her home for dinner, his mother had said, suspicion evident in her voice. That sounds like a date, sweetheart. It's networking, Mom. That's all. But as he drove to Elena's house that evening, stomach tight with nerves he had no business feeling, Daniel wondered if he was lying to his mother or to himself. Cars already lined the driveway when he arrived, expensive imports and luxury sedans that probably cost more than he made in a year. Daniel parked his truck at the end and sat for a moment, gathering himself. This was a mistake. He didn't belong here, but he'd promised Elena, and he didn't break promises. The front door opened before he could ring the bell. Elena stood there in a simple black dress that probably cost thousands despite looking effortless. Her hair was pulled back and she wore minimal jewelry, just small diamond earrings that caught the light. You came, she said, and he heard genuine relief in her voice. Said I would. Most people say lots of things. She stepped aside. Come in. Fair warning, they're exactly as tedious as I expected. The gathering was in the formal dining room Daniel had glimpsed, but never entered. A long table set with crystal and china, candles flickering, wine bottles already open and breathing. 7 people stood around making conversation, all of them dressed like they'd stepped out of a magazine spread. They turned as one when Daniel entered. Everyone, this is Daniel Harper, Elena said, her hand settling briefly on his lower back. Daniel, this is everyone. She introduced them one by one. Marcus, a venture capitalist with salt and pepper hair and a handshake designed to intimidate. Veronica, who owned a chain of boutique hotels and smiled with too many teeth. James and Patricia, a married couple who ran some kind of tech consultancy and finished each other's sentences. Robert, a hedge fund manager who looked bored before Daniel even spoke. And finally, Diane, an art dealer with sharp eyes and sharper jewelry. Daniel's an electrician, Elena said, and he heard the challenge in her voice, daring them to dismiss him, waiting to see who would. How fascinating, Veronica said, in a tone that meant the opposite. Do you specialize in residential or commercial? Both, whatever needs fixing. He's being modest, Elena cut in. Daniel's doing extensive work on several of my properties. His attention to detail is exceptional. Marcus raised his glass. High praise from Elena. She's not easily impressed. They moved to the table. Elena had seated Daniel to her right, placing him between herself and Diane. The art dealer turned out to be the most tolerable of the group. She asked genuine questions about his work and seemed interested in the answers. There's artistry in electrical work, she said as the first course arrived, some kind of delicate seafood arrangement Daniel didn't recognize. The invisible architecture that makes modern life possible. People don't appreciate it until it fails. Most people don't think about it at all, Daniel said, which is how it should be. If I've done my job right, the system is invisible. That's the tragedy of good craftsmanship, Diane said. It disappears into functionality. Across the table, Marcus was holding forth about some merger he was facilitating, his voice loud with self-importance. Patricia and James were debating the merits of some new project management software. Veronica kept glancing at her phone. Robert had barely spoken. Elena caught Daniel's eye and made an expression so subtle no one else would have noticed, a tiny grimace that said, "See what I mean?" He fought back a smile. The meal progressed through multiple courses, each more elaborate than the last. The conversation drifted from business deals to property markets to political speculation, all of it surface level, performative. People speaking to hear themselves rather than to connect. Elena tells us you're a single father, Patricia said during the third course. That must be challenging in your line of work. It has its moments, Daniel said carefully. I can't imagine, she continued. James and I decided early on that children would interfere with our professional goals. Too much sacrifice required. It's not really sacrifice if you want to do it, Daniel said. Oh, but surely you've had to give things up. Career opportunities, social life, personal freedom? Daniel felt Elena tense beside him. Before he could respond, she cut in. Patricia, do you remember when you told me you gave up sleeping more than 4 hours a night to meet your quarterly targets? Would you call that sacrifice or commitment? That's different, is it? Daniel chose to prioritize his daughter the same way you chose to prioritize your company. The only difference is you're judging his choice because it doesn't align with your values. Patricia's smile tightened. I didn't mean to offend. Of course you didn't, Elena said smoothly. You never do. An uncomfortable silence settled over the table. Marcus broke it by launching into another story about himself. But under the table, Elena's hand found Daniel's briefly. A quick squeeze of solidarity before she withdrew. After dinner, the group moved to the sitting room for coffee and brandy. Daniel found himself standing near the window while the others clustered around Elena, each trying to monopolize her attention. He watched her navigate their demands with practiced grace, giving each person just enough engagement to satisfy without revealing anything real. It looked exhausting. She speaks highly of you, a voice said beside him. Robert, the hedge fund manager, had materialized with 2 glasses of brandy. He offered one to Daniel. That's unusual. Elena doesn't typically mix professional and personal. I'm not sure this counts as personal, Daniel said. You're in her home, meeting her associates. That's more personal than most people get. Robert sipped his drink. Fair warning. Everyone here is trying to figure out what you want from her. They're not used to seeing her with someone who isn't obviously useful. Maybe I'm not trying to get anything. Then you're either a fool or genuinely different. Either way, you've got their attention. Robert glanced at Elena. She's brilliant, you know. Built her entire empire on seeing patterns others missed. But brilliance doesn't keep you warm at night. I think she's lonely. She told me loneliness is preferable to the alternative. Did she? Robert smiled. Then maybe you know her better than I thought. The evening wound down around 10. The guests began making their exits, air-kissing Elena and promising to be in touch. Veronica tried to corner her about some property investment, but Elena deflected with expert precision. Finally, they were alone. Elena sagged against the closed door, all the polished poise draining out of her. That was exactly as awful as I predicted. They seem nice isn't the word. Useful. That's the word. They're all useful to me in various ways, so I maintain the relationships. But tonight you saw why I prefer being alone. She kicked off her heels. Thank you for coming, and for not making me regret inviting you. Patricia was pretty hostile. Patricia's hostile to anyone who makes choices she doesn't understand. Don't take it personally. Elena moved to the bar and poured 2 glasses of whiskey. You handled it well. Better than I expected, honestly. You thought I'd crumble under scrutiny? I thought you might feel out of place. Instead, you were just yourself. Do you know how rare that is in my world? Everyone performs. Everyone's managing their image, calculating their words, trying to be whoever they think I want them to be. She handed him the whiskey. You didn't do any of that. Didn't see the point. I am who I am. Pretending otherwise seemed like a waste of energy. Elena smiled. That real smile he'd only seen a few times. This is why I like you, Daniel. You cut through all the bullshit. They stood in her empty living room, the silence of the house settling around them. Daniel knew he should leave. It was late, he had work in the morning, and staying felt like stepping further into territory he'd promised himself to avoid. But he didn't move. Can I ask you something? He said. Always. Why do you keep doing this? Hosting these dinners, maintaining relationships with people you don't even like? You've got enough money to do whatever you want. Why not just stop? Elena considered the question, swirling her whiskey. Because stopping would mean admitting that all of this, the money, the success, the empire I built, didn't actually give me what I wanted, and I'm not ready to admit that yet. What did you want? I thought I wanted freedom, independence, the power to make my own choices without depending on anyone. She laughed softly. Turns out freedom is just another word for isolation when you have no one to share it with. The vulnerability in her voice cracked something open in Daniel's chest. He recognized that loneliness, had felt it himself in the quiet moments after Lily went to bed, when the apartment felt too empty and the future stretched out like an endless series of identical days. You're not as alone as you think, he said quietly. No? You invited me here tonight. That's something. I invited you because you're safe, because you don't want anything from me. Maybe that's exactly what you need, someone who doesn't want anything except to know you. Elena looked at him, really looked at him, and something shifted in her expression. Not the polished mask she wore for her business associates, or the careful neutrality she maintained with contractors. This was raw and uncertain and entirely real. I don't know how to do that, she said. Let someone know me, I mean. I've spent so long keeping people at a distance, I'm not sure I remember how to let them close. You're doing it right now. She took a step toward him, then another, until they were close enough that Daniel could smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive that made him think of rain and cedar. This is a terrible idea, she whispered. Probably. You work for me. That complicates things. It does. And we come from completely different worlds. This couldn't possibly work. You're probably right. So why does it feel like the smartest thing I've done in years? Daniel didn't have an answer for that. But when Elena closed the remaining distance between them, when her hand came up to rest against his chest and her eyes searched his face for permission, he stopped thinking about complications and consequences and all the logical reasons this was a mistake. Daniel, she said, his name barely a breath. Yeah? Stay. It wasn't a command or a proposition. It was a question. An invitation, a request for something she clearly didn't ask for often, and despite every rational voice in his head screaming that this would end badly, that he was crossing a line he couldn't uncross, that mixing professional and personal with someone like Elena Cross could only lead to disaster, despite all of that, Daniel nodded. Okay. The word hung between them for a heartbeat. Then Elena's hand slid up to his neck, pulling him down. And when their lips met, it felt like falling and landing at the same time. Her mouth was soft and sure, her body warm against his, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, Daniel let himself stop thinking about consequences. When they finally broke apart, both breathing harder, Elena rested her forehead against his. I don't do this, she said. I don't let people in. I don't take risks on connection. I know. So what are we doing? Daniel pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. Something terrifying, something that might not work, something that's probably a terrible idea. He touched her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. But I'm tired of playing it safe, aren't you? Elena's laugh was shaky, vulnerable. Terrified, actually. Me too. She kissed him again, slower this time, and it felt like an answer to a question neither of them had known how to ask. When she took his hand and led him down the hallway, past the formal rooms and polished surfaces, into the private spaces of her home, Daniel went willingly. They ended up in her study, a room he'd never seen before. Books lined the walls, a desk sat beneath the window, and a leather couch faced a fireplace that Elena lit with a remote. The room was warm and lived in, so different from the sterile perfection of the rest of the house. They sat on the couch, not quite touching, but close enough to feel each other's warmth. The fire crackled between them and the silence. Tell me something true, Elena said. Something you don't tell people. Daniel thought about it. I'm scared I'm failing Lily, that I'm so focused on keeping her safe and fed that I'm forgetting to actually raise her, that she'll grow up and realize her dad was just going through the motions, keeping her alive but not really helping her live. Elena's hand found his. You're not failing her. You love her enough to worry about that. That's more than a lot of kids get. What about you? Something true. She was quiet for a long moment. I built my entire company to prove my parents wrong, to show them I could succeed without their approval or their vision for my life. And then they died before I could prove anything, and now I'm worth billions, but there's no one left who I wanted to impress. Her voice cracked. So I just keep building, keep succeeding, because stopping would mean facing how empty the victory actually is. Daniel pulled her closer, and she let him. Her head came to rest on his shoulder, and they sat there watching the fire, two people who'd spent so long being strong that they'd forgotten how to be vulnerable. "We're a mess," Elena said eventually. "Yeah, we are. This is going to be complicated. Definitely. And it might not work." "Probably won't," Daniel agreed. "You're a billionaire who lives in this massive house and attends dinners with venture capitalists. I'm a single dad who drives a 10-year-old truck and buys groceries based on what's on sale. Our lives don't exactly align." "No, they don't." Elena lifted her head to look at him. "But maybe that's not what matters. Maybe what matters is that when I'm with you, I don't feel like I have to perform. I can just be Elena. Not the CEO or the success story or the woman who proved everyone wrong, just me. And when I'm with you, I feel like there might be more to life than just getting through each day. Like maybe I'm allowed to want something for myself, not just for Lily." "What do you want, Daniel?" The question hung in the air between them, weighted with possibility. Daniel thought about all the wants he'd buried over the years, the business he'd dreamed of starting, the life he had imagined before responsibility reshaped everything, the simple desire for partnership and connection he'd convinced himself he didn't need. "This," he said finally, "I want this, whatever this is." Elena kissed him again, and this time when she stood and reached for his hand, when she led him out of the study and up the stairs to her private space, Daniel understood they were crossing a threshold that would change everything. But he went anyway. Because for the first time in years, wanting something felt less like weakness and more like courage. Daniel woke to unfamiliar softness, sheets with a thread count he couldn't begin to guess, a mattress that seemed to remember the exact shape of his body, morning light filtered through curtains that probably cost more than his monthly rent. For a disorienting moment, he couldn't remember where he was. Then he felt Elena beside him, still asleep, her breathing quiet and even, and everything from the night before came rushing back. He should feel panic, regret, maybe. The rational part of his brain cataloged all the ways this complicated his life, the professional boundary he'd crossed, the vast difference in their circumstances, the impossibility of building something real across such a massive divide. But lying there in the early morning quiet, watching dust motes drift through slanted sunlight, all Daniel felt was peace. Elena stirred, her eyes opening slowly. When she saw him, a smile crossed her face, small and genuine and utterly unguarded. "Hi," she said, her voice rough with sleep. "Hi. You stayed. You asked me to." She reached for him, her hand finding his beneath the covers. "I wasn't sure you would. Most people don't when I ask for things that matter." "I'm not most people." "No," she agreed softly. "You're not." They lay there in comfortable silence, neither rushing to fill the space with words or decisions about what this meant. Outside, birds were singing. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimed 7. Reality crashed back in. "I have to pick up Lily," Daniel said, sitting up abruptly. "My mom's been watching her since last night, and I told her I'd be back by 8, and—" "Daniel." Elena's hand on his arm stopped his spiraling. "It's okay. Go get your daughter. We can talk later." "About what happened?" "Later," she repeated, but there was warmth in her voice. "Right now, your daughter needs you. That comes first. It should always come first." He wanted to kiss her, wanted to stay, wanted to figure out what the hell they were doing and whether it was sustainable. But she was right. Lily came first. She always came first. Daniel dressed quickly, finding his clothes scattered across Elena's bedroom floor. She walked him to the door wearing a silk robe, her hair still mussed from sleep, looking more beautiful than she had any right to. "Thank you," he said at the threshold, "for last night, for understanding about this morning, for—" Elena stopped him with a kiss, brief but certain. "Go. Be a father. We'll figure out the rest." The drive to his mother's house felt surreal, like he was moving between two entirely different lives. By the time he pulled into her driveway, he'd almost convinced himself the previous night had been a dream. His mother opened the door before he could knock. "You look terrible," she said by way of greeting. Good morning to you too, Mom. Don't good morning me. You've got that look. What look? The look men get when they've done something stupid they're trying to pretend isn't stupid. She stepped aside to let him in. Coffee's fresh. You're going to need it. Lily was at the kitchen table, coloring with intense concentration. She looked up when Daniel entered, her face splitting into a grin. Daddy! He scooped her up, holding her tight. This was real. This was what mattered. Everything else was just noise. Did you have fun with Grandma? We made cookies and watched movies, and she let me stay up late. Lily's conspiratorial whisper wasn't quite as quiet as she thought. Don't tell Grandma I told you. Your secret's safe with me. His mother poured him coffee and fixed him with a look that said this conversation wasn't over, but she waited until Lily returned to her coloring before speaking. So, she said quietly, this client of yours. Mom, I'm not judging. I'm just saying, be careful. Rich people live in different worlds than we do, and mixing business with personal, that's a recipe for heartache. I know what I'm doing. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, you look like a man who just realized he's in deeper than he planned to be. She touched his arm. I just don't want to see you get hurt. Or worse, I don't want to see you hurt that little girl because you got caught up in something that can't possibly work. Her words echoed his own fears, the doubts he'd been trying to ignore. But beneath them, he heard concern. Love. A mother worried about her son making choices that might leave him broken. I'll be careful, he promised. That's all I ask. The weekend passed in a blur of normalcy, grocery shopping with Lily, cleaning the apartment, helping her practice reading, making meals, doing laundry, the ordinary rhythms of single parenthood that had defined his life for 5 years. But beneath it all, his mind kept drifting back to Elena, to the way she'd looked at him, to the vulnerability she'd shown, to the question neither of them had answered, what now? Monday morning brought a text. Can we talk? Tonight, if you're free? Daniel stared at the message for a long moment before responding. I can drop Lily at my neighbor's. 7, okay? Perfect. I'll cook. The thought of Elena cooking, Elena, who probably had a personal chef on call, made him smile despite his nerves. He showed up at 7 exactly, carrying a bottle of wine he'd agonized over at the store, knowing whatever he brought would be inferior to what she had in her cellar, but feeling like showing up empty-handed would be worse. She opened the door in jeans and a soft sweater, barefoot again, her hair loose. The formal Elena from the dinner party had disappeared, replaced by someone softer, more real. You brought wine, she said, taking the bottle. You didn't have to. Felt wrong not to. She led him to the kitchen, where something was actually cooking on the stove. I should warn you, I'm not great at this. Cooking, I mean. I can handle the basics, but don't expect anything fancy. After years of making chicken nuggets and mac and cheese, my expectations are pretty low. Elena laughed, and some of the tension in the air dissipated. She poured them each a glass. His wine, he noticed, not something from her collection, and they sat at the kitchen island while pasta bubbled on the stove. So, she said, we should probably talk about what happened. Probably. I don't regret it, if that's what you're worried about. Relief flooded through him. I don't either, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't concerned about how this works. Practically, I mean. You're worried about the money, the difference in our circumstances. Among other things, yeah. You live in this, he gestured around them, and I live in a 2-bedroom apartment above a dry cleaner. You have dinner parties with venture capitalists. I have play dates with other parents at the park. Our lives don't exactly overlap. Elena stirred the pasta, her expression thoughtful. You're right, they don't. And I'd be lying if I said I knew how to bridge that gap. But Daniel, the reason I'm drawn to you has nothing to do with your bank account or your social circle. It's because when you look at me, you see me. Not my money, not my success, not what I can do for you. Just me. Do you know how rare that is? So what are you suggesting? We just see where this goes? I'm suggesting we try, carefully, with our eyes open to all the complications. She turned off the stove. I'm not asking you to change your life or pretend to be someone you're not. I'm just asking if you're willing to see if there's something here worth exploring. Daniel thought about his mother's warning, about all the logical reasons this was a terrible idea. But he also thought about how Elena made him feel, seen and valued, and like maybe he was allowed to want something for himself. I have conditions, he said. Okay? Lily comes first, always. If this affects her negatively in any way, I walk. No discussion. Agreed. What else? I don't want your money. I know that sounds stupid or proud, but I need to know I'm building my own life, providing for my daughter through my own work. If this becomes about you rescuing me or supporting me financially, it won't work. Elena nodded slowly. I understand, though I reserve the right to occasionally buy dinner without you having an existential crisis about it. Despite himself, Daniel smiled. Deal. And one more thing, we keep this private, for now, at least. I don't need my clients or my daughter's school or anyone else knowing my personal business. Believe me, I value privacy as much as you do. Probably more. She served the pasta, simple marinara with garlic bread, nothing fancy but made with obvious care. So we're doing this? Actually trying? Yeah, we are. They ate dinner at her kitchen counter, talking about everything and nothing. Lily's latest obsession with dinosaurs, Elena's current business challenges, Daniel's thoughts about eventually expanding his services, Elena's confession that she'd been taking pottery classes online and was terrible at it. I have 50 malformed bowls in my studio, she said, laughing. They're hideous, but I can't seem to stop making them. Why pottery? Because it doesn't matter if I fail. No board meeting to report to, no shareholders to disappoint. Just me and clay and the absolute certainty that I have no idea what I'm doing. She took a sip of wine. It's freeing. Show me. What? Show me your terrible bowls. I want to see them. Elena looked uncertain, but she led him to her studio. True to her word, shelves were lined with lumpy, asymmetrical bowls in various states of completion. Some were glazed, others still raw clay. None of them were good, but there was something charming about them, evidence of effort without ego, creation without the pressure of perfection. They're awful, right? Elena said. They're honest, Daniel corrected. You can see where you struggled, where you tried something new. That's not awful. That's human. She looked at him, something shifting in her expression. You have this way of reframing things, making failure sound like progress. It is progress. Every mistake teaches you something. That's worth more than easy success. Elena moved closer, her hand finding his. Stay tonight, please. I know you have to leave early for Lily, but stay. So he did. And when he left before dawn to pick up his daughter before school, kissing Elena goodbye in the quiet dark of her bedroom, Daniel felt like he was living two separate lives, one as a single father navigating the everyday challenges of parenting, the other as a man discovering connection with someone extraordinary. The question was whether those two lives could ever fully merge, or if he'd spend the rest of whatever this was moving between them like a ghost, never fully inhabiting either. The following weeks fell into a pattern. Daniel worked his regular jobs during the day, picked up Lily from school, made dinner, supervised homework, and handled bedtime. 3 or 4 evenings a week after Lily was asleep and his neighbor agreed to listen for her, he'd drive to Elena's house. They'd talk for hours, or cook together, or simply exist in the same space while she worked and he read. Some nights they stayed up late making love with an intensity that left them both breathless. Other nights they just held each other, finding comfort in proximity. But they kept it carefully separated from the rest of their lives. Elena never came to his apartment. Daniel never met any of her business associates beyond that initial dinner party. It was a relationship that existed in a bubble, protected from outside scrutiny but also isolated from anything resembling normal. Don't you ever want to do normal couple things? Daniel asked one evening, lying in her bed while she traced patterns on his chest. Go to dinner, see a movie, walk around the city together? I do, Elena admitted. But I also know what happens when people see us together. The speculation, the assumptions, the invasion of privacy. You'd become Elena Cross's boyfriend, defined entirely by your relationship to me. Is that what you want? No, he said honestly. But I don't want to hide either. It feels like we're ashamed of this. I'm not ashamed. I'm protective. There's a difference. She propped herself up on one elbow. But you're right. We can't live in a bubble forever. Maybe we start small, somewhere out of the city where we're less likely to be recognized. Like a date? Like a date. They chose a small coastal town 2 hours away, a place neither of them had connections. Daniel told his mother he had a weekend job out of town. Not quite a lie, but not quite the truth either. Elena simply cleared her schedule. Lily went to stay with her grandmother, excited about the sleepover. The drive out of the city felt significant, like they were crossing into new territory. Daniel's truck rumbled along the highway while Elena sat in the passenger seat, her designer sunglasses slightly incongruous with the worn upholstery and fast food napkins stuffed in the door pocket. "This is weird," she said. "What is?" "Being in your space. Seeing how you actually live outside of your work or my house." She touched the dashboard. "This truck is very you." "Is that a compliment?" "It is. It's practical and reliable and well-maintained despite being old, like you." I'm 32, not ancient." "You know what I mean." She settled back in her seat. "Thank you for this. For being willing to try." The town was perfect. Small enough to be quiet, but large enough to have a decent restaurant and a few shops. They checked into a bed and breakfast run by an older couple who barely glanced at them, clearly more interested in their afternoon soap opera than their guests. "Well," Daniel said, setting their bags down in the room. "We made it." "Now what?" "Now we be normal," Elena said. "Whatever that means." They walked along the waterfront, ate lunch at a seafood shack, browsed a bookstore where Elena bought 3 novels, and Daniel found a book about dinosaurs for Lily. It was aggressively ordinary, and it was perfect. "I can't remember the last time I did something like this," Elena said as they sat on a bench watching boats bob in the harbor. "Just existing without purpose or agenda." "That's most of my life," Daniel said. "Existing without agenda." "No, you have an agenda. It's called raising your daughter well. That's more purpose than most people have." A little girl ran past chasing a seagull, her father jogging behind her calling warnings about getting too close to the water. Daniel watched them, feeling the familiar ache of recognition. That was his life. Constant vigilance, perpetual worry, the weight of being wholly responsible for another person's well-being. "Do you ever resent it?" Elena asked quietly. "Being a parent, I mean. Having your life revolve around someone else's needs." "Sometimes," he admitted. "Not Lily herself, but the weight of it. The way every decision has to be filtered through, is this good for her? The sacrifices that don't feel like sacrifices until you realize you can't remember the last time you did something just because you wanted to." He turned to her. "But that's parenthood. You sign up knowing your life isn't entirely your own anymore." "I don't think I could do it. Give up that much of myself." "You already give up huge parts of yourself, just to your company instead of a child." Elena considered this. "That's different. I chose my work. And I chose to be Lily's father. Actively chose it. Every day. Even when it's hard. That's the difference between sacrifice and commitment." She took his hand, lacing their fingers together. "You're going to be an amazing father as she grows up. Patient and thoughtful and present in ways my parents never were." "What were your parents like?" "Disappointed, mostly. In me, in their marriage, and how their lives turned out. My father wanted a son to carry on his business. My mother wanted social status she never achieved. I was just evidence of their failure to get what they wanted." Elena's voice was flat, the pain long since calcified into fact. "They loved me in their way, I suppose. But it was a conditional love, performance-based. I could never quite measure up. That's their failure, not yours. I know that now. But knowing it intellectually and believing it emotionally are different things." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I spent so long trying to prove I was worth loving despite not being what they wanted. Building a billion-dollar company, becoming successful beyond their wildest dreams. And then they died before I could show them, and I realized I'd built my entire life around ghosts." Daniel pulled her closer, understanding in a way he hadn't before why she kept people at such a distance. Love had taught her it was conditional, that worth had to be earned, that disappointment was inevitable. No wonder she'd built walls. "You don't have to prove anything to me," he said quietly. "I'm not keeping score." "I know. That's what terrifies me." They spent the evening at a small Italian restaurant, sharing a bottle of wine and talking about everything except business or parenting or the complications waiting for them back in the city. For a few hours, they were just Daniel and Elena, two people trying to build something real. I have something I want to tell you, Elena said over dessert. Or ask you, actually. Okay. My company is launching a new initiative, a mentorship program for young entrepreneurs from underrepresented backgrounds. We're providing seed funding, business guidance, connections, all of it. And I want to expand it to include skilled trades, electricians, plumbers, carpenters, people building real businesses in practical fields. She set down her fork. I want your input, not as my contractor, but as someone who understands that world, what these businesses need, what challenges they face, how to actually help instead of just throwing money at problems. Daniel felt something shift in his chest. Not quite suspicion, but wariness. Elena, this isn't about us, she said quickly. Or it is, but not the way you're thinking. I've been planning this program for months. But talking to you, hearing about your dream of starting your own business, it made me realize we were missing a whole sector. And yes, I want your expertise, but I'm willing to pay consulting fees. This is professional. You want to pay me to tell you how to help people like me? I want to pay you for your knowledge and insight, the same way I'd pay any other expert consultant. She met his eyes. I know you have boundaries about money. I'm trying to respect them, but I also know you have valuable perspective that could help this program actually make a difference. So I'm asking, professionally, if you'd be willing to consult. It was a careful line she was walking, and Daniel recognized the effort it took. She was trying to include him in her world without making him feel bought or diminished. What kind of commitment are we talking about? Monthly meetings with the program team, maybe 20 hours total over 6 months. You'd help us understand what skilled trade businesses actually need, not what we assume they need, but reality. Equipment, training, licensing support, whatever makes sense. She paused. And yes, before you ask, this could potentially benefit you if you ever decided to start your own business. But that's not why I'm offering. I'm offering because you're the most competent person I know in this field, and competence is worth paying for. Daniel thought about it, about the opportunity to shape something that could help people like him, people who had skills and dreams but lacked access and capital, about being taken seriously as an expert rather than just a contractor, about the risk of mixing their relationship with business even more than it already was. I'll do it, he said finally, but I want clear boundaries. Work stays work. This doesn't bleed into us. Agreed. They shook hands across the table, formal and deliberate. Then Elena smiled and the moment shifted from business back to personal. Now that that's settled, she said, want to get out of here? They walked back to the bed and breakfast under a sky full of stars, the kind of darkness you couldn't get in the city. Daniel couldn't remember the last time he'd seen this many stars. I could get used to this, Elena said, looking up. The quiet, the simplicity. You'd be bored in a week. Probably. She slipped her hand into his. But it's nice to pretend. That night, they made love slowly, deliberately, like they were trying to memorize each other. Afterwards, lying tangled together in sheets that smelled like lavender and sea salt, Elena spoke into the darkness. I'm falling for you. Probably already have fallen, if I'm being honest, and it scares me more than any business deal or investment ever has. Daniel's heart stuttered. Yeah? Yeah, because business, I understand. Risk assessment, contingency planning, exit strategies. But this? Us? I have no idea what I'm doing, no framework for how to make this work, and the not knowing terrifies me. I'm terrified too, Daniel admitted. You're brilliant and successful, and you live in a completely different world than I do. Every logical part of my brain says this is temporary, that eventually reality will catch up, and you'll realize I can't possibly fit into your life long term. But I'm falling anyway. Already have fallen, I think. So what do we do? We keep trying. We keep being honest. We keep choosing this even when it's hard. He pulled her closer. And we stop waiting for it to fall apart and just see what we can build instead. Elena kissed him, and it tasted like promise and hope and the terrifying possibility of something real. They drove back to the city Sunday evening, both quieter than the drive out. The weekend had shifted something between them, taken them from careful exploration to genuine commitment. They'd stopped pretending this was casual or temporary. They were building something, even if neither of them knew exactly what. Thank you, Elena said as Daniel pulled up to her house. "For the weekend, for being willing to try. Thank you for asking me to." She kissed him goodbye, long and thorough, before climbing out of the truck. Daniel watched her walk to her door, unlock it, turn to wave before disappearing inside. And for the first time since this whole thing started, he let himself believe it might actually work. The first consulting meeting happened on a Thursday afternoon in Elena's downtown office, a space Daniel had never seen before. The building was all glass and steel, the kind of place where security guards checked IDs and elevators required keycards. Elena met him in the lobby, professional in a charcoal suit, her hair pulled back severely. "Thank you for coming," she said, shaking his hand like they were strangers. The formality felt strange after the intimacy of their weekend, but Daniel understood. This was her world, and here she had a role to play. The conference room was on the 32nd floor, windows overlooking the city. 4 other people were already seated around the table, 2 women and 2 men, all dressed in business attire that probably cost more than Daniel's monthly grocery budget. "Everyone, this is Daniel Harper," Elena said. "He's our skilled trades consultant for the mentorship program. Daniel, this is Rebecca Chen, our program director. Marcus Lloyd from Strategic Partnerships. Jennifer Oakes, who handles community outreach, and Thomas Rivera, our legal counsel." They shook hands around the table, and Daniel noticed the way they assessed him, curious but reserved, clearly wondering what qualified an electrician to sit at this table. "Daniel brings a unique perspective," Elena continued, taking her seat at the head of the table. "He's spent over a decade building a reputation in electrical work, understands the challenges of running a small business in skilled trades, and has the practical knowledge we need to make this program effective rather than performative." Rebecca opened a folder. "We've drafted preliminary program guidelines. Currently, we're focused on tech startups and retail businesses, but Elena suggested expanding to include skilled trades. We'd like your input on what that would look like." Daniel pulled out the notebook he'd brought, feeling slightly ridiculous with his worn spiral pad surrounded by tablets and laptops. "Can I ask what you're hoping to accomplish? Because funding a skilled trades business is different from funding a tech startup. The needs are different, the timeline is different, the measures of success are different." "Such as?" Marcus asked, his tone slightly condescending. "Tech startups can scale fast with the right funding. Skilled trades businesses grow slower because they're built on reputation and word of mouth. You can't rush trust. So throwing money at equipment or marketing won't necessarily translate to success." Daniel flipped open his notebook. "What matters more is licensing support, insurance guidance, safety compliance, building a client base through quality work. That takes time and mentorship, not just capital." Jennifer leaned forward. "So, what would you recommend?" "Pair each business with an established contractor in their field, someone who can teach them not just the technical skills, but the business side. How to bid jobs accurately, manage cash flow, handle difficult clients, build a reputation. Give them access to wholesale suppliers so they're not paying retail on materials. Help them navigate licensing requirements, which vary by state and can be a nightmare. And yes, provide seed capital, but make it contingent on completing business training. Otherwise, you're just setting people up to fail expensively." The room was quiet for a moment. Then Rebecca started typing rapidly on her laptop. "That's exactly the kind of insight we need," she said. "We've been approaching this from a traditional startup model, but you're right, it doesn't translate." They spent the next 2 hours going through details. Daniel found himself relaxing into the conversation, realizing these people weren't dismissive of his expertise. They were genuinely interested. They asked questions about insurance requirements, about common business mistakes he'd seen, about what would have helped him when he was starting out. Elena spoke little, mostly listening and taking notes. But occasionally she'd glance at Daniel, and something would pass between them, pride maybe, or recognition. She'd been right to bring him into this. "This has been incredibly valuable," Rebecca said as the meeting wound down. "Can we schedule a follow-up in 2 weeks?" Daniel checked his phone calendar. "I can do Thursday afternoons. I pick my daughter up from school at 3, so I'd need to leave by 2:30. "That works perfectly," Jennifer said. "We usually wrap by 2 anyway." As everyone gathered their things, Thomas approached Daniel. "I appreciate your perspective today. Too often these programs are designed by people who've never actually done the work. It shows." "Happy to help," Daniel said. Elena walked him to the elevator, maintaining professional distance until the doors closed and they were alone. "You were brilliant," she said, her formality dropping away. "Exactly what they needed to hear." "I just told them the truth." "Most consultants don't. They tell clients what they want to hear." The elevator descended smoothly. "Thank you for doing this. Thank you for asking." He wanted to kiss her, but settled for brushing his hand against hers. "Same time next week, the non-professional version?" "I'll cook," she promised. The elevator doors opened and Elena's professional mask slipped back into place. They said goodbye in the lobby like business associates, but Daniel felt the weight of her gaze as he walked away. Over the next month, a rhythm developed. Thursday afternoons meant consulting meetings, where Daniel helped shape a program that could genuinely help people like him. 3 or 4 evenings a week meant Elena's house, quiet dinners, and long conversations, and the growing sense that they were building something sustainable. But the separation between his two lives was becoming harder to maintain. Lily was asking questions about where he went in the evenings. His mother was making pointed comments about his improving mood, and Daniel was running out of excuses for why he was never available on weekends. "I think I need to tell my mom," he said one evening, lying in Elena's bed while she read beside him. "About us, I mean." Elena looked up from her book. "Are you sure?" "She knows something's going on, and I'm tired of lying to her. She's been watching Lily more often. Deserves to know why." "What will you tell her?" "The truth. That I'm seeing someone. That it's serious. That I'm happy." He paused. "She'll want to meet you eventually." Something flickered across Elena's face, fear maybe, or uncertainty. "Daniel, I'm not good at family dynamics. I don't know how to be the person parents want their son to be with." "You don't have to be anything except yourself. That's enough." "Is it? Because I come with a lot of baggage. Wealth that makes people uncomfortable, a lifestyle that doesn't exactly scream stable partner for a single father, a work schedule that's unpredictable at best." Daniel set aside his own book, turning to face her fully. "My mom's going to judge you no matter what. That's what mothers do. They're protective of their kids. But she's also fair. She'll see what I see if you give her the chance." "And what do you see?" "Someone trying really hard to be real in a world that rewards performance. Someone who's brilliant and successful, but also kind and thoughtful when she lets herself be. Someone I'm falling more in love with every day." Elena's breath caught. "You've never said that before. The love part." "I know, but it's true. I love you, and I'm tired of keeping that separate from the rest of my life." She kissed him then, deep and thorough, and when she pulled back, her eyes were bright. "I love you too, even though it terrifies me. Even though I have no idea how to do this right. Nobody does. We're all just figuring it out as we go." "When do you want to tell your mother?" "This weekend. I'll ask if she can watch Lily Saturday afternoon. Tell her then." Elena nodded, though Daniel could see the anxiety in her expression. "Okay. But Daniel, if she hates me, if this makes things difficult with your family," "It won't. And even if it did, it wouldn't change how I feel about you." Saturday arrived too quickly. Daniel dropped Lily off at his mother's house with the excuse that he had a meeting with a potential client. His mother's skeptical look suggested she wasn't buying it, but she didn't push. "I'll bring her back around 6, Daniel said. "But Mom, can we talk first? Just for a few minutes?" Her expression shifted from skeptical to concerned. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, everything's good. I just need to tell you something." They sat in her living room while Lily played in the backyard. His mother poured coffee neither of them wanted, a delaying tactic they both recognized. "So," she said finally, "you're going to tell me about this woman. How did you—" "Daniel, you're my son. You think I don't notice when you're happy? When you're distracted in a good way instead of stressed? When you suddenly care about ironing your shirts?" She smiled. "So tell me about her." "Her name's Elena. She's a client, was a client. I started doing electrical work for her a few months ago, and we got to know each other, and it just happened." "What does she do?" Here was the moment of truth. "She runs a tech company, a successful one." "How successful?" "Very." His mother's eyes narrowed. "Define very." "She's a billionaire, Mom." The silence that followed was deafening. His mother set down her coffee cup very carefully, like she was afraid she might drop it. A billionaire, she repeated. Yes. And you're dating her. Yes. Daniel, I know what you're going to say, that we're from different worlds, that it can't possibly work, that I'm setting myself up for heartbreak. I've thought about all of it. But Mom, she makes me happy. Really happy, and I love her. His mother studied him for a long moment. Does she love you back? She says she does. Do you believe her? Daniel thought about Elena's vulnerability, the way she'd opened up to him, the careful walls she'd lowered. Yeah, I do. Then I'm happy for you, but Daniel, I'm also worried. She leaned forward. Wealthy people live by different rules. They have different priorities, different pressures, and you have Lily to think about. If this relationship becomes serious, if Elena becomes part of Lily's life and then it ends, that's not just your heartbreaking. That's your daughter's too. I know, which is why I've been keeping them separate. Elena hasn't met Lily yet. But you want her to. Eventually, when we're both ready, when I'm sure this is stable enough that it won't hurt Lily if things change. His mother nodded slowly. You've thought this through. I've tried to. But honestly, Mom, I don't have all the answers. I'm just trying to do the best I can with something I never expected to happen. That's all any of us can do. She reached across and squeezed his hand. I want to meet her. This Elena. If she's important to you, if you're serious about her, I should know who she is. She's nervous about meeting you. She didn't have a good relationship with her own parents, and I think family dynamics scare her. All the more reason for me to meet her. Make sure she knows not all parents are terrible. His mother smiled. Bring her to Sunday dinner next week. Nothing formal, just family. Lily will be here too, so it'll be casual. Panic flared in Daniel's chest. Mom, I don't think... that's a lot. Meeting you and Lily at the same time. Daniel, if this woman is going to be part of your life, she needs to understand what your life looks like. And your life is centered around that little girl playing in my backyard. Better Elena sees that now than later. She had a point, but the thought of Elena meeting Lily, of those two worlds finally colliding, filled Daniel with equal parts hope and terror. Let me talk to her, he said, see if she's ready. Fair enough, but Daniel, if she's not ready to meet your daughter, maybe she's not ready for this relationship. That evening, Daniel drove to Elena's house directly from his mother's. He found her in her studio, covered in clay dust, her hand shaping something on the potter's wheel. How did it go? She asked, not stopping her work. She wants to meet you. Sunday dinner next week. Elena's hand slipped, and the bowl she was shaping collapsed into a lumpy mess. Oh. And Lily will be there too. It's family dinner, so everyone's included. Now Elena did stop, her hands falling to her lap. Daniel, I don't know if I'm ready for that. Meeting your mother is one thing, but Lily, I know, it's a lot, but Mom's right. If we're serious about this, if we're building something long-term, you need to see what my life actually looks like. And my life is built around Lily. What if she doesn't like me? What if I say the wrong thing, or I'm too formal, or I don't know how to talk to a 7-year-old? Daniel crossed to her, kneeling beside the potter's wheel. Then you'll figure it out, the same way you figured out everything else. Elena, I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm just asking you to show up and be yourself. What if myself isn't enough? It always has been for me. She looked at him, clay-covered and vulnerable, and slowly nodded. Okay, Sunday dinner. But Daniel, if this goes badly, it won't. You don't know that. No. But I have faith in you, and I have faith in us. He kissed her forehead, leaving a smudge of clay. Now show me how this pottery thing works. Elena laughed, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. You want to make terrible bowls with me? I want to do anything with you, even if it results in terrible bowls. They spent the evening covered in clay, laughing at their failed attempts at pottery, and for a few hours the anxiety about Sunday faded into the background. But as Daniel drove home that night, he felt the weight of what was coming. Two worlds colliding, the separate pieces of his life finally merging. It could bring everything together or tear it all apart. The week passed too quickly. Daniel tried to prepare Elena for meeting his family, but how do you prepare someone for a chaotic Sunday dinner with a precocious 7-year-old and a mother who specialized in reading people? Just be yourself, he kept saying. That's not as reassuring as you think it is, Elena replied. Sunday arrived gray and drizzly. Daniel picked Elena up at noon, finding her dressed in jeans and a simple sweater, clearly trying not to look too wealthy or formal, but still managing to look expensive. "You look great," he said. "I changed outfits 4 times. Nothing felt right." "Elena, it's just dinner. It's your family. It's the people who matter most to you. It's absolutely not just dinner." He took her hand. "My mom is going to love you because I love you. And Lily is going to be Lily, which means she'll probably ask you 100 questions and show you every toy she owns and tell you about her entire life story in excruciating detail. That's just who she is." "What if I don't know how to respond? I've never spent time with children. What if I'm awkward or boring or..." "Then you'll be awkward, and that's okay. Nobody expects you to be perfect." He squeezed her hand. "I just need you to be you. Can you do that?" Elena took a shaky breath. "I can try." Daniel's mother lived in a modest ranch house in a working-class neighborhood, the kind of place where neighbors knew each other and kids played in the street. Daniel's truck fit right in among the other practical vehicles lining the curb. Elena's designer handbag, however, did not. "She's going to hate me," Elena whispered as they walked up the driveway. "She's not." The front door flew open before they reached it. Lily stood there in her favorite dinosaur t-shirt, eyes wide with curiosity. "Daddy!" She launched herself at Daniel, who caught her easily. "Grandma said you're bringing a friend for dinner." "I am. Lily, this is Elena." "Elena, this is my daughter Lily." Lily turned her assessing gaze on Elena. "You're really pretty. Are you Daddy's girlfriend?" Daniel felt Elena stiffen beside him, but when she spoke, her voice was steady. "I am. Is that okay with you?" Lily considered this seriously. "Does that mean you'll come to my soccer games?" "If you want me to." "Okay. Do you like dinosaurs?" "I don't know much about them, but I'd love to learn." "I can teach you. I know everything about velociraptors." Lily grabbed Elena's hand, tugging her inside. "Come on, I'll show you my books." Daniel watched his daughter pull Elena into the house, chattering about prehistoric creatures, and felt something settle in his chest. Maybe this would be okay after all. His mother emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She studied Elena with the same assessing look Lily had given her, but warmer. "You must be Elena. I'm Margaret. Welcome to our home." Elena extricated herself from Lily's grip long enough to shake hands. "Thank you for having me. Daniel's told me so much about you." "I doubt that. My son keeps his cards close to his chest." Margaret smiled. "But I'm glad he's finally introducing us. Dinner will be ready in about 30 minutes. Lily, stop monopolizing our guest. Let her breathe." "But Grandma, I'm teaching her about dinosaurs." "You can teach her at the table. Go wash your hands." Lily reluctantly released Elena and bounded toward the bathroom. Margaret gestured toward the living room. "Can I get you something to drink? Wine? Water? Coffee?" "Water would be lovely, thank you." They settled in the living room, and Daniel watched Elena try to find the right posture, the right expression, the right words. She was so used to performing that being genuine seemed to require conscious effort. "So," Margaret said, returning with glasses of water, "Daniel tells me you run a tech company." "I do. We develop enterprise software solutions for..." Elena stopped herself. "Sorry, I tend to slip into business mode. Yes, I run a company. It's been my focus for the past 8 years. That must be demanding." "It is, but I love it. Building something from nothing, solving complex problems, working with brilliant people." Elena glanced at Daniel. "Though lately I've been learning there are other things worth focusing on too." Margaret's expression softened slightly. "Daniel also mentioned you're helping develop a mentorship program for skilled trades businesses. That's impressive. It's necessary. Too many talented people can't access the resources they need to build sustainable businesses. We're trying to change that." Elena shifted in her seat. "Your son's been invaluable in shaping that program. His insights have completely transformed our approach. He's good at what he does, always has been. He's better than good. He's exceptional. He just doesn't realize it." Daniel felt heat creep up his neck. "Can we not talk about me like I'm not here?" "No," both women said simultaneously, then laughed. The tension in the room eased. Margaret asked about Elena's work in more detail. and Elena responded with genuine enthusiasm, describing challenges and innovations in terms that didn't require a technical background to understand. She asked Margaret about her own work. She'd been a school secretary before retiring, and listened with real interest to stories about managing chaotic elementary schools. Lily returned, hands scrubbed pink, and immediately climbed into the chair next to Elena. "Did you know velociraptors were actually about the size of turkeys?" she announced. "I didn't know that," Elena said. "The movies make them seem much bigger. That's because Hollywood lies." Lily said this with the grave seriousness of a 7-year-old sharing forbidden knowledge. "But I know the truth." "Then I'm lucky to learn from an expert." Dinner was pot roast with vegetables, comfort food that filled the small dining room with warmth and familiar smells. They ate family style, passing dishes and talking over each other, the easy chaos of people comfortable together. Elena looked slightly overwhelmed by it all, but she adapted. She listened when Lily explained the entire plot of her favorite movie. She asked Margaret for the pot roast recipe. She laughed at Daniel's embarrassing childhood stories. "He was such a serious child," Margaret said, "always fixing things, taking them apart to see how they worked. I couldn't keep a toaster or a lamp intact for more than a month before he'd disassemble it." "Did you put them back together?" Elena asked Daniel. "Eventually. Sometimes they worked better after, sometimes not so much." "There was an incident with the vacuum cleaner," Margaret said. "He was 12, thought he could improve the suction, ended up creating a machine that made terrible noises and smelled like burning plastic." "But it worked," Daniel protested. "It scared the cat so badly she hid under the bed for 3 days." Elena was smiling now, genuinely relaxed. "I would have loved to see that." After dinner, Lily dragged Elena into her room to see her dinosaur collection. Daniel started clearing dishes and his mother joined him in the kitchen. "She's not what I expected," Margaret said quietly. "What did you expect?" "Someone more polished, performative, but she's real, underneath the nervousness. And she loves you. I can see it in how she looks at you. She's terrified of screwing this up." "Good. That means she cares." Margaret handed him a plate to dry. "But Daniel, be careful. Not because I don't trust her, but because this is complicated. Lily's getting attached already. Did you see how she grabbed Elena's hand? If this relationship doesn't work out—" "I know, Mom. I know." He set down the dish towel. "But I can't protect Lily from every possible hurt, and I can't live my life assuming everything will fail. I have to have faith that this might work." Margaret pulled him into a hug. "Then I'll have faith too, for both of you." Oh. When they returned to the living room, they found Lily showing Elena her extensive collection of plastic dinosaurs, explaining the differences between herbivores and carnivores with the authority of someone who'd memorized every fact. "And this one is a triceratops, and he's my favorite because he has 3 horns and he could fight T-Rexes even though he only ate plants, and Daddy got him for me for my birthday last year. And—" "Lily, take a breath," Daniel said, laughing. "But I have so many more to show her." "Maybe Elena needs a break." "Actually," Elena said, "I'd love to hear about the rest of them, if that's okay." Lily beamed and launched into descriptions of her remaining dinosaurs. Daniel caught his mother's eye, and she smiled in a way that said maybe this would work after all. They left around 7, Lily making Elena promise to come to her next soccer game. In the truck, Elena was quiet. "That went well, I think," Daniel said. "Your mother is wonderful, and Lily is—" Elena's voice cracked. "She's perfect, Daniel. Exactly the kind of kid who makes you believe the world isn't completely broken. She liked you. She was kind to me. There's a difference." "No, she genuinely liked you. I could tell." He reached over and took her hand. "Thank you for doing that, for meeting them. I know it was hard." "It was terrifying, but also—" Elena stared out the window. "It was nice, seeing your life, understanding what matters to you. Your mom's right. You were a serious child. You can see it in how you are with Lily. Thoughtful, attentive, always making sure she's okay. Is that bad? It's beautiful. You're building something real with her, a relationship based on trust and love and actually showing up." Elena's voice went quiet. "I wish my parents had done that for me." Daniel squeezed her hand, understanding that this had been about more than just meeting his family. This had been Elena confronting what family could be, what parenting could look like when done with intention and care. "You could have that someday," he said, "if you wanted it. I don't know if I'd be any good at it. Parenting, I mean. I don't have a good template." Neither did I. My dad was great, but he wasn't exactly emotionally available. I had to figure out how to be present for Lily through trial and error. He pulled into her driveway. But that's what parenting is, showing up even when you don't know what you're doing and trusting that love is enough. Elena turned to him. "Do you want more children? Eventually?" The question caught him off guard. They'd never discussed future plans beyond the immediate present. "I don't know. Maybe. I'd never really thought about it. Why?" "Because I need to know if that's something you want, if that's part of your vision for the future." "Is it part of yours?" "I don't know. I've spent so long convinced I'd be a terrible mother that I never let myself consider it seriously. But today, watching you with Lily, seeing how Margaret raised you, it made me wonder if I could do it differently than my parents did, if I could break that cycle." Daniel turned off the truck. "Elena, we don't have to figure this all out right now. We can just take it one day at a time and see where it goes." "But what if where it goes is different places? What if I want things you don't, or you need things I can't give you?" "Then we'll figure it out, together, the same way we figured out everything else." He cupped her face. "I love you. That's what matters right now. Everything else is just details we can work through." She kissed him, and it tasted like hope and fear, and the uncertain promise of a future they were building together, one careful step at a time. The weeks following that Sunday dinner brought a shift in how Daniel and Elena navigated their relationship. It was no longer something hidden or separate from the rest of their lives. Elena started appearing at Lily's soccer games, standing on the sidelines with the other parents, cheering when Lily scored and commiserating when her team lost. She came to dinner at Daniel's apartment, a cramped two-bedroom that felt microscopic compared to her house, but she sat on his worn couch and ate his simple cooking and never once made him feel like it wasn't enough. Daniel, in turn, attended a gallery opening with her, met more of her business associates, and learned to navigate the careful politics of her world. He was still the electrician dating the billionaire, still aware of the gap between them, but it bothered him less now. Elena had chosen him knowing exactly who he was, and that counted for something. But it was a Thursday afternoon consulting meeting, 2 months after that first family dinner, when everything changed. Daniel arrived at Elena's office to find the conference room tense. Rebecca's expression was tight, Marcus looked irritated, and even Jennifer seemed unusually quiet. Elena sat at the head of the table, her professional mask firmly in place, but Daniel could see the frustration in the set of her shoulders. "What's going on?" he asked, taking his usual seat. "We have a problem," Rebecca said. "The board is questioning the skilled trades component of the mentorship program. They want to cut it from the budget." Daniel felt his stomach drop. "Why?" Marcus leaned back in his chair. "They don't see the ROI. Tech startups can scale quickly, show exponential growth, generate headlines. Skilled trades businesses grow slowly, stay local, don't make for impressive quarterly reports. The board wants to focus resources on programs that enhance the company's public profile." "So this is about optics," Daniel said flatly. "It's about strategic resource allocation," Marcus corrected, but his tone suggested he agreed with the board's assessment. Daniel looked at Elena. She met his eyes but said nothing, and something cold settled in his chest. She wasn't fighting this. She was sitting there, silent, while they dismantled a program that could genuinely help people. "Elena," he said carefully, "you're okay with this?" "I'm not okay with it, but I also have to answer to a board of directors who control significant aspects of how we allocate funds. This isn't a dictatorship." "But you're the founder. You have influence." "Influence, yes. Absolute power, no." Her voice was measured, controlled. "I've made my case for continuing the program. The board disagrees. I have to pick my battles, Daniel. I can't fight them on everything." The disappointment was sharp and immediate. This was the Elena he'd seen at that first dinner party, the one who maintained relationships with people she didn't like because they were useful, who made compromises to keep her empire running, who prioritized strategic considerations over genuine impact. "So you're just giving up," he said. "I'm being realistic about what I can accomplish within existing power structures." That's corporate speak for giving up. The room went very quiet. Rebecca and Jennifer looked acutely uncomfortable. Marcus watched with obvious interest, like this was entertainment. Elena's expression hardened. Daniel, this isn't the time. When is the time? When do we stop being strategic and start actually doing something that matters? He stood up, anger and disappointment warring in his chest. You told me this program was important, that helping skilled trades businesses was necessary and right. But the moment it becomes inconvenient, the moment it doesn't serve your company's image, you fold. That's not fair, isn't it? Because from where I'm sitting, you're choosing comfort over conviction. You're choosing to play nice with a board that only cares about optics instead of fighting for something real. Elena stood as well, her professional mask cracking. You don't understand the pressures I'm under, the expectations, the responsibilities. I can't just burn bridges with my board because one program isn't working out the way we hoped. One program that could change people's lives. People like me who have the skills and the drive but not the resources or connections. But sure, let's prioritize quarterly reports instead. Daniel, no, you know what? I'm done. He grabbed his notebook. I thought you were different. I thought you actually cared about making a difference instead of just performing charity for good press. But you're just like the rest of them. All talk, no follow-through. He walked out, his heart hammering, barely hearing Elena call his name. The elevator ride down felt endless. By the time he reached his truck, his hands were shaking. His phone started buzzing before he made it home. Elena calling, texting, trying to explain. Daniel ignored all of it. He picked up Lily from school, made dinner, helped with homework, went through all the familiar motions while his mind replayed the confrontation. He'd been unfair. He knew that. Elena was navigating complex dynamics he didn't fully understand, balancing competing interests and obligations. But he'd also been right. She'd backed down without a real fight, prioritized institutional harmony over the program's mission, and if she'd compromise on this, what else would she compromise on when things got difficult? That night, after Lily was asleep, Daniel finally listened to Elena's voicemail. Daniel, please call me back. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be, but let me explain, this isn't over. I'm not giving up, I'm trying to find another way. Please, call me. He didn't call. 3 days passed. Elena tried reaching out multiple times, calls, texts, even showing up at one of Lily's soccer games. Daniel saw her standing apart from the other parents, waiting. He should have gone over, should have talked to her. Instead, he focused on Lily, on the game, on anything except the woman he loved looking lost and uncertain on the sidelines. When the game ended, she approached cautiously. Can we talk? She asked. Not here. Then where? When? Daniel, you can't just shut me out. I'm not shutting you out. I'm processing. For 3 days? That's not processing. That's punishing me. She was right, and he knew it. But the disappointment still sat heavy in his chest, and he wasn't ready to let it go. I need more time, he said. Elena's expression crumpled, but she nodded. Okay. But Daniel, please understand. I'm trying to fix this. She walked away before he could respond, and Daniel felt the loss of her presence like a physical ache. That evening, his mother called. Lily said Elena was at the game, but you didn't talk to her. What happened? Daniel explained the situation, the board's decision, his confrontation with Elena, the silent since. So you're punishing her for being human, his mother said when he finished. I'm not punishing her. I'm disappointed. Same thing when you're refusing to communicate. Daniel, you're angry because she didn't live up to the standard you set for her. But did you ever consider that standard might be impossible? That she's dealing with pressures and constraints you don't fully understand? She built that company from nothing. She has more power than she's admitting to. Power, yes. But absolute power? Probably not. And even if she did, using it recklessly could destroy everything she's built. Is that what you want? For her to blow up her entire company to save one program? I want her to fight for what matters. And maybe she is, just not in the way you expected. His mother sighed. You know, your father and I had different approaches to conflict. He wanted to confront everything head on, deal with it immediately, force resolution. I needed time to process, to think through options, to find solutions that didn't require burning everything down. We frustrated each other constantly, but we learned that different approaches doesn't mean someone doesn't care. It just means they care differently. What are you saying? I'm saying Elena loves you. I saw it when she came to dinner, saw it in how she talks about you, how she looks at you. But she also has a complex life with responsibilities you can't fully appreciate. Maybe instead of demanding she handle things your way, you could try understanding her way, or at least talking to her before deciding she's failed you. After they hung up, Daniel sat in his quiet apartment and forced himself to consider the possibility that he'd been unfair. Elena had never pretended to be perfect. She'd been honest about her struggles, her fears, her limitations, and he'd thrown all of that back in her face the moment she didn't meet his expectations. He texted her, "Can you come over tomorrow evening, after Lily's asleep? We should talk." Her response came immediately, "I'll be there." Elena arrived at 8:30 the next night, looking exhausted. She'd clearly been working long hours, stress etched into every line of her face. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," she said, standing awkwardly in his doorway like she wasn't sure she was welcome. "Come in." They sat on his couch, the same couch where they'd shared countless quiet evenings. But now the space between them felt vast. "I'm sorry," Daniel said, "for how I reacted, for shutting you out instead of talking to you. That wasn't fair. You had every right to be angry." "Maybe. But I didn't have the right to decide you'd failed without hearing your side. So I'm listening now. Tell me what's really going on." Elena took a shaky breath. The board wanted to cut the entire mentorship program, not just skilled trades, but everything. They saw it as a vanity project that wasn't generating enough positive press to justify the investment. I fought them for hours, Daniel. I presented data, testimonials, projected impact. I threatened to fund it personally if they cut the budget. And I managed to save most of it. The tech startups, the retail businesses, all of that stays funded. But I couldn't save all of it. The skilled trades component was the easiest for them to cut because it was newer, less established, easier to frame as expendable. You didn't tell me any of that. Because I was humiliated. I'd brought you into this program, promised it would make a difference, and then I couldn't protect it. I felt like I'd failed you. And when you walked out, it confirmed everything I was afraid of, that I wasn't strong enough, that I'd let you down, that I wasn't worth— Her voice cracked. That I wasn't worth loving when I couldn't be perfect. Daniel's heart twisted. Elena, I never needed you to be perfect. Didn't you? Because the moment I showed weakness, the moment I couldn't fix everything, you left. Just like I always knew people would if I let them see I wasn't invincible. That's not why I left. I left because I thought you'd given up without fighting. But you did fight. You just couldn't win everything, and I punished you for being human instead of superhuman. Elena wiped at her eyes. I'm still working on it. I've been researching alternative funding sources, reaching out to other organizations that might partner with us, trying to find a way to save the program outside of company resources. But Daniel, it's going to take time, and it might not work. I can't promise I'll succeed. I don't need you to promise success. I just need you to try. And to let me in when things are hard instead of shutting me out. I was trying to protect you, from seeing me fail, from being disappointed in me. I don't need protection from your humanity. I need partnership. I need you to trust me enough to be vulnerable, to admit when things aren't perfect, to let me support you the way you support me. Elena moved closer, and Daniel pulled her into his arms. She was shaking, all the stress and fear she'd been holding finally releasing. I'm so tired, she whispered, of performing, of being strong, of trying to be everything for everyone. Sometimes I just want to stop. Then stop. At least with me. You don't have to be the CEO or the billionaire or the woman who has all the answers. You can just be Elena. That's enough. She pulled back to look at him, tears streaming down her face. I don't know how to do that. I've been performing for so long, I don't remember how to just be. Then we'll figure it out together, the same way we figured out everything else. They sat there holding each other, and slowly Elena's breathing steadied. When she finally spoke, her voice was raw but resolute. I have something to tell you. I've been thinking about it for weeks, but I was too scared to say anything because it changes everything. Daniel's heart began to race. Okay. I'm stepping back from the company, not leaving entirely, but transitioning from CEO to a board position. I'm hiring someone else to run day-to-day operations while I focus on the parts that actually matter to me. The mentorship program, strategic initiatives, innovation, the parts that make a difference instead of just generating profit. Elena, that's huge. Are you sure? I'm terrified. This company has been my entire identity for 8 years. But I realized something watching you with Lily, talking to your mother, seeing how you've built a life around things that actually matter. I've been so focused on proving I could succeed that I forgot to ask what success actually looks like. And it doesn't look like this. Endless board meetings and strategic compromises and sacrificing programs that matter because they don't serve corporate interests. What does it look like? It looks like time. Time to actually live instead of just work. Time with you. Time to figure out what I want beyond endless growth and expansion. Time to build something real instead of just impressive. She took his hand. I want to make this work, Daniel. Us. But I can't do that if I'm spending 80 hours a week managing a company I'm not even sure I want to run anymore. So I'm choosing differently. I'm choosing us. Daniel felt tears prick his own eyes. You don't have to do that for me. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for me. But I'm doing it because you showed me it was possible. Because you chose Lily over easier paths. Chose building something meaningful over just getting by. You taught me that sacrifice isn't giving up what you want. It's choosing what matters most. What about the skilled trades program? I'm funding it personally, outside of company resources, without board approval, using my own money to create the program we envisioned. It'll be smaller at first, but it'll be exactly what we designed. Mentorship, licensing support, equipment access, everything those businesses actually need. She smiled through her tears. I can't fight the board on how they run the company, but I can build something separate, something real, something that makes a difference without compromising. That's going to cost you a fortune. I have a fortune. Might as well use it for something worthwhile. She cupped his face. I love you, Daniel. And I'm sorry it took me this long to realize that loving you means being brave enough to choose differently, to stop hiding behind corporate structures and strategic thinking and start actually living. He kissed her, tasting salt and hope and the promise of something new. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. I love you too, and I'm sorry for expecting you to be perfect instead of human, for walking away instead of staying and fighting alongside you. We're both learning, Elena said softly, how to do this, how to be together, how to merge our very different lives. We're going to mess it up sometimes. Probably a lot. Definitely a lot. But maybe that's okay. Maybe messy and imperfect is better than performing perfection. They spent the rest of the evening talking through details. Elena's transition plan for the company, the timeline for launching the independent mentorship program, how they'd navigate the increased time she'd have available, what their relationship might look like with fewer constraints. I want to be more involved in your life, Elena said, with Lily, with your mother, with the everyday parts that make up who you are. Not as an outsider looking in, but as someone who actually belongs. Lily already adores you, and my mom thinks you're good for me. What do you think? I think you're the best thing that's happened to me in years. Terrifying and complicated and completely worth it. Elena smiled, and it was that real smile he'd fallen in love with, unguarded and genuine and entirely hers. So where do we go from here? Forward, together, one imperfect day at a time. 3 months later, Daniel stood in an empty warehouse space downtown, Elena beside him, both of them covered in dust and possibility. You're sure about this? She asked. I've never been more sure of anything. The space was enormous. Enough room for a full workshop, office space, storage, everything he'd need to launch his own electrical contracting business. Elena had found the location, negotiated the lease, and helped him develop a business plan. But the decision to actually do it, to leave the safety of steady employment and build something of his own, that had been all Daniel. Harper Electric, Elena read from the sign design on his tablet. Simple, professional, very you. You don't think it's too plain? I think it's perfect, honest and straightforward, just like the person behind it. They'd spent months planning this. Late nights going over finances, weekends researching equipment and suppliers, Countless conversations about timing and risk and whether Daniel was ready. Elena had offered to fund the startup costs outright, but Daniel had refused. Instead, they'd structured it as a business loan at fair market rates, with Elena as a lender rather than a benefactor. It preserved his independence while giving him the capital he needed. The mentorship program had helped too. Elena had officially launched it 2 months prior, funding it entirely through her personal wealth. Daniel was both a consultant and one of the first mentors, paired with a young woman from a low-income neighborhood who was brilliant with electrical systems but had no idea how to turn that skill into a viable business. Teaching her had reminded him why this work mattered. Not just the technical skills, but the opportunity to build something meaningful. "When do you want to tell Lily?" Elena asked, running her hand along a dusty workbench. "Tonight at dinner. Both her and my mom. Make it official." They'd been having weekly family dinners, sometimes at his mother's house, sometimes at his apartment, occasionally at Elena's place when she insisted on cooking despite her limited skills. Lily had started calling Elena by her first name without hesitation, dragging her into games and homework help and bedtime stories when she stayed over. It felt natural now, the blending of their lives, in a way it hadn't at the beginning. "She's going to be so proud of you," Elena said. "I'm terrified I'm going to fail. That I'm risking everything, our savings, our stability, our future, on something that might not work. You're not going to fail, but even if you struggled, even if it took longer than expected, you'd figure it out. Because that's what you do. You show up, you work hard, you solve problems. That's worth more than any amount of capital." Daniel pulled her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her perfume mixed with warehouse dust. "Thank you for believing in me even when I didn't believe in myself. That's what love is, seeing someone's potential even when they can't see it themselves." They stood there in the empty warehouse, imagining what it would become. Daniel pictured trucks with his company logo, a team of electricians he'd trained personally, projects that challenged and fulfilled him, a legacy he could be proud of. Not just a job, but a business built on integrity and quality work. "I have something for you," Elena said, pulling a small box from her bag. Inside was a key on a simple keychain, but engraved on the metal was a date, the day they'd first met, when Daniel had shown up at her house to fix a flickering garage light. "So you never forget where we started," she said, "a routine job that became anything but routine." Daniel's throat tightened. "I could never forget. That was the day my life changed." "Mine too." That evening, they gathered at Daniel's apartment for dinner. Him, Elena, Lily, and his mother. The table was crowded and the food was simple, but it felt complete in a way Daniel's life hadn't felt in years. "I have an announcement," he said as they finished eating. Lily looked up with interest. "Are you and Elena getting married?" Heat flooded Daniel's face while Elena choked on her water. His mother hid a smile behind her napkin. "Not quite yet, sweetheart. Maybe someday, but that's not today's announcement." He took a breath. "I'm starting my own business. Harper Electric. I found a space, developed a business plan, and I'm launching in 6 weeks." Lily's eyes went wide. "You're going to be your own boss?" "I am." "That's so cool." She turned to Elena. "Did you know about this?" "I did. I've been helping your dad plan it." "Your dad's been dreaming about this for years," Margaret added. "I'm so proud of you for finally doing it." They talked through details over dessert. Lily's questions about whether she could visit the workshop, Margaret's practical concerns about insurance and licensing, Elena's quiet pride in how far he'd come. It felt right, all of them together, supporting this next chapter. After dinner, while Daniel cleaned up and Lily showed his mother a school project, Elena stepped onto the small balcony. He found her there a few minutes later, staring out at the city lights. "You okay?" he asked. "More than okay. I'm happy. Really, genuinely happy in a way I haven't been in years." She turned to him. "I used to think happiness required perfection, the perfect company, the perfect success, the perfect life without complications or mess. But this," she gestured back toward the apartment where they could hear Lily's laughter, "this messy, imperfect, complicated life is better than anything I could have planned. No regrets about stepping back from the company? None. My replacement is brilliant, the board is happy, and I have time to actually live. I've been painting more, taking pottery classes that aren't just online tutorials, even started volunteering at Lily's school library. Normal things that normal people do when their entire identity isn't wrapped up in corporate success. You're still incredibly successful. You just redefined what success means. I learned that from you. You could have stayed in a safe job, avoided risk, played it small, but you're choosing to build something bigger, even though it's scary. That's success, having the courage to grow. Daniel wrapped his arms around her from behind, and they stood there watching the city together. Somewhere below, life continued. People rushing home from work, families having dinner, couples navigating their own complicated relationships. They were just two people among millions, but their story felt singular and precious. Lily asked if we're getting married, he said quietly. I heard. Sorry about that. Don't be sorry. She asks because she loves you. Because you're part of her life now, and she wants that to be permanent. Elena turned in his arms. What do you want? Honestly, I want forever with you. I want to build this business and raise Lily and navigate all the messy, complicated parts of life together. I want Sunday dinners and weeknight routines and lazy Saturday mornings. I want all of it with you. That sounds perfect. Yeah? Yeah. She kissed him softly. Though maybe we wait until your business is launched before we add wedding planning to the chaos? Practical and romantic. I love that about you. I love everything about you, even the parts that drive me crazy. They stayed on the balcony until Margaret announced she was heading home. Lily was already in her pajamas, but she insisted Elena read her a bedtime story before she'd even consider sleeping. Daniel watched from the doorway as Elena sat on Lily's bed, reading about dragons and princesses with genuine engagement. His daughter was curled against her side, completely comfortable, completely trusting. And Elena, brilliant, powerful, complicated Elena, looked more at peace than he'd ever seen her. This was his life now, not perfect, but real. Not simple, but meaningful. Not what he'd planned, but better than anything he could have imagined. After Lily fell asleep, Elena stayed. They'd gotten into the habit of her spending several nights a week at his apartment, navigating the small space and thin walls and early morning chaos of getting a 7-year-old ready for school. She'd bought a drawer for her things, hung a robe in his bathroom, learned which floorboards creaked and how to make coffee in his ancient machine. I've been thinking, she said as they got ready for bed, maybe I should sell my house. Daniel paused mid-brushing his teeth. What? It's too big, too isolated. I bought it to prove I could, but it's never felt like home. This, she gestured around his cramped bedroom. This feels like home. Because you're here. Elena, you can't sell a multi-million-dollar house to move into my tiny apartment. Why not? Okay, maybe not this apartment specifically, but we could find something together, something that fits both our lives, that has space for your workshop equipment and my art studio and Lily's dinosaur collection. A real home, not just a showcase. Are you serious? Completely. I'm tired of living in separate spaces, of coordinating schedules to spend time together. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to help Lily with homework and have dinner together and build an actual life instead of just visiting each other's lives. Daniel set down his toothbrush. That's a huge step. I know, and we don't have to do it right away. But I wanted you to know I'm thinking about it, that I'm committed to this, to us, to building something permanent. He pulled her close, overwhelmed by how much his life had changed. 6 months ago, he'd been going through the motions: work, parenting, survival. Now he was launching a business, building a future, falling deeper in love every day with a woman who saw him completely and chose him anyway. I'm committed too, he said, to all of it. The messy, complicated, beautiful, all of it. They fell asleep tangled together in his too-small bed, and Daniel dreamed of warehouses becoming workshops, houses becoming homes, separate lives becoming shared futures. 6 weeks later, Harper Electric officially opened. Daniel had hired 2 electricians to start, both graduates from Elena's mentorship program, who were talented but lacked the experience to launch their own businesses yet. The warehouse had been transformed into a professional workspace, organized tool storage, a small office area, space for vehicles and equipment. Elena had insisted on being there for the opening, along with Lily and Margaret. They'd brought a cake decorated with tiny electrical outlets made of frosting, and Lily had made a banner that said, "Congratulations, Daddy," with dinosaurs drawn around the letters. "This is incredible," Margaret said, touring the space. You should be so proud. I am, terrified but proud. That's how you know it matters. The first month was chaos, learning to manage employees, bid on jobs as a company rather than an individual, handle the administrative nightmare of running a business. But Daniel loved it. The challenge, the growth, the sense of building something that could outlast him. Elena was there through all of it, offering advice when he asked but never pushing, celebrating victories and problem-solving setbacks. She'd fully stepped back from her company now, spending her time on the mentorship program, her art, and increasingly on building their life together. They found a house 3 months after the business launched. A modest place by Elena's standards, but spacious by Daniel's, with enough room for everyone and everything they needed. Lily got her own room with space for her growing dinosaur collection. Elena got a studio for her painting and pottery. Daniel got a garage workshop for small projects and equipment storage. Moving day was controlled chaos. Lily supervised everything with the authority of someone who'd watched far too many home renovation shows. Margaret brought food and practical advice. Elena's moving company handled the heavy lifting, though she insisted on personally packing her art supplies because she didn't trust anyone else not to damage them. "This is really happening," Daniel said that evening, surrounded by boxes in their new living room. "This is really happening," Elena confirmed. They decided to wait on marriage, not because they weren't committed, but because they were focused on building the foundation first. The business was still new and demanding. Lily needed time to adjust to the new house and Elena's permanent presence. They wanted to do it right, not rush. But commitment didn't require a legal document. It showed in how Elena learned Lily's bedtime routine, in how Daniel made space for Elena's work obligations, in how they navigated disagreements and celebrated victories and supported each other through the ordinary challenges of daily life. A year after that first flickering garage light brought them together, Daniel stood in their shared kitchen making breakfast while Elena helped Lily with a school project at the table. Sunlight streamed through the windows, and the coffee maker gurgled cheerfully, and everything was beautifully, perfectly ordinary. "Dad, can Elena come to Career Day?" Lily asked. "I want to tell everyone about her mentorship program." "You'd have to ask her, not me." Lily turned to Elena with hopeful eyes. "Will you come?" "I would love to," Elena said. "As long as your dad can come too and talk about running Harper Electric." "Both of you can come. We'll be the coolest presentation." Daniel caught Elena's eye across the table, and they shared a smile that contained everything they'd built, the risk they'd taken on each other, the walls they'd lowered, the life they'd created from a chance encounter and a willingness to try. "Thank you," he said quietly later when Lily was at school and they had a rare quiet moment. "For what?" "For taking a chance on the electrician who showed up at your door, for seeing something worth knowing beneath the work clothes and the truck and the completely ordinary life. You were never ordinary, you just didn't know it yet." Elena kissed him softly. "And thank you for seeing past the money and the walls and the fear. For teaching me that love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up honestly and choosing each other every day. Even on the hard days? Especially on the hard days." They stood in their kitchen, in their shared home, in the life they'd built together, and Daniel felt something settle in his chest. Not the absence of fear or uncertainty, those would always be there, part of being human. But beneath them was something stronger, gratitude for this woman who'd disrupted his expectations, challenged his assumptions, and loved him with the same fierce commitment he brought to everything that mattered. Outside, the world continued. Businesses to run, children to raise, challenges to navigate. But inside, in this moment, everything was exactly as it should be. Two people from different worlds who'd found common ground in honesty and commitment, and the courage to build something real. It wasn't the life Daniel had planned. It was better. And as Elena returned to her pottery wheel in the studio, humming softly while she worked, and Daniel headed to the warehouse to check on his team's progress, and Lily came home that afternoon bursting with stories about her day, he understood that this was what success actually looked like. Not perfection or wealth or the absence of struggle, but the daily choice to show up, to try, to love, imperfectly and completely. The garage light that had brought them together was long since fixed, but what they'd built in its place, trust and partnership, and a future shaped by intention rather than accident, that would last far longer than any electrical connection. And in the end, that was all that mattered.